people who sleep naked. When has it backfired? Story 1. Not me, but I was spending the night at my friend's house in a suburban neighborhood. In the middle of the night, his mom had let their toy fox terrier out to go pee and it got snatched by a coyote. She screamed and woke us all up. A wolf got noodle. Within 10 seconds, his dad was sprinting out of the house completely butt naked with a Glock in his hand and went running down the street. Came back about 15 minutes later with the dog and obviously still completely naked. Story 2. I had a closet-sized single dorm room and people would always pull the fire alarm in the middle of the night and we'd all have to go outside. One time I was so drowsy I just walked out instinctively and halfway down the hall I raced back. Thankfully, this was an old building, so I didn't get locked out of the room. Story 3. I don't know if I would call it backfired, but when the suicidal girl that's staying the night at your brother's house because they're watching this girl for suicide reasons wakes you up in the middle of the night and is sitting right on top of you telling you that you have to talk her down right then and there or she's going to kill herself in front of you. Yeah, you would probably just rather be clothed for that encounter. Story 4. Been sleeping in the raw since I was a kid, and would fidget out of my PJs. I think it used to bug my mother, but she finally gave up. Every girlfriend would start out the relationship by joining me, but over time would end up with the conventional night clothes. Hasn't backfired on me yet. Story 5. I normally don't do this, but one summer night I had a meal from my local Mexican place that I love. Since I was busy that day, I didn't have lunch and decided to get significantly more than what I normally order to cure the hangry. I also did not get an opportunity to poop that day. Since it was unusually hot that night, I decided to ditch everything and sleep bare. After one very realistic dream of me on the toilet, let's just say that I had to get a new set of bedsheets the next morning. Story 6. One time my sister was hiding in my closet to wait for a bit until I was almost asleep so she could scare me. Unfortunately, she didn't know I was whacking it and she jumped out to scare me right as I came, which ended up going all over her face and into her mouth. My mom heard the commotion and came into my room to investigate, and after seeing me naked and my sister covered in my jizz, got the wrong idea. To make a long story short, I now have to F both of them every night so they won't tell my girlfriend. Story 7. I started somewhere in high school because of night sweats. In college, I moved into an on-campus apartment alone, and the very next morning I woke up to 3 grown mid-50s dudes with their faces in my window. My bed was directly below the window. University housing gave some BS excuse about my window needing maintenance. Just my window specifically. None of the others in the entire complex. The window wasn't even designed to open. I think they were being pigs, but I was 1,000 miles away from anyone who cared about me and just let it go. Story 8. When in uni, my room was right in front of the university. So when looking out my windows, you would look straight into classrooms. So one day the inevitable happened. I had forgotten to close the curtains at night. You couldn't see me while I was in bed due to the head of the bed obstructing the window. However, getting out of the bed would expose my entire naked body to the world. So any bored student whose sight was wandering off outside the classroom window could get a nice viewing of my naked body. The way I fixed it was by simply rolling up in my bedsheets and sort of hop to my curtains and my bedsheet roll. I'm male BTW, so I didn't have to cover up top. Story 9. A few years ago, I was working a night shift and had just returned home at 7 a.m. I was so tired that I didn't close the front door properly. After I activated the house alarm, I went to my room and undressed myself and went to bed. I wake up to the alarm blaring and I look around my room. As I hear yelling, I see there are 2 female cops in the house with their guns out, and one of them was pointing it at me. I'm half asleep and not really understanding what was going on. The officer asked if I lived here, to which I said yes. Then she ordered me to show her my ID. My ID, which was in my wallet, was on my dresser. I pointed her to where my wallet was. She ordered me to show it to her, and I said I couldn't get up because I was naked under my blanket. So, while still pointing her gun at me, she opened up my wallet. After that, the cops left in. After securing the front door properly, I went back to sleep. Story 10. I was young, like 12, and had just hit puberty. I had slept naked my whole life and it didn't change. One day, super hot babysitter that I didn't know was gonna work tries waking me up, which was hard because I was a really heavy sleeper. I woke up right as she pulled the covers off me to behold my 12-year-old rock-hard morning would pee. Story 11. I was at a house fire once during the night, and the homeowner slept naked. When we arrived, he was running around his front yard naked with a garden hose. Thankfully, he was not injured and we were able to salvage most of his belongings. And the one thing he said is that he learned to now sleep with shorts on. Story 12. I've always slept naked, but the heater in my room was broken and it was getting too cold even with layers of blanket. I woke up that morning and knew I had the house to myself at least till late afternoon, so I continued snoozing in my sister's room with the heater on. Next thing I knew, I heard voices coming up the stairs. It was my sister and her friends. I guess they decided to ditch school and thought I wasn't home. I had no other choice but to roll over and hide under the bed. They were hanging out in that room for a good 2 hours and I was under the bed completely naked the whole time. That was almost 15 years ago and she still has no idea. Story 13. I was in middle school and had been sleeping naked under the covers for years while my parents would come in and wake me up. Somehow, my body always managed to stay the blanket by the time morning rolled around. So I was never worried about someone coming in the morning only to see my bare self exposed. Well, only Saturday. I was sleeping in and there was some event that my parents wanted to go to along with my older sister and me. They asked her to go in and wake me so that I could get ready. My several years long streak of successfully being hidden by the blanket ended that day as my bare ass was exposed to the door of my bedroom. I woke up to the sound of my sister screaming at the top of her lungs shouting, "You, why do you sleep naked?" I just remember thinking, I can't believe that after all that time of people coming into my room and waking me up with me being under the blanket. The one time I wasn't full under was the one time my sister came in. Story 14. Not really backfiring per se, but this made and makes my wife laugh whenever she thinks about it. A few weeks ago, we heard a crash at about 2:30 a.m. I groggily grabbed my 9mm shotgun is locked up downstairs while I researched new safes and went to investigate. I cleared the entire house buck naked. I went back to bed, locked my 9mm back in its case next to my bed and laid down. About 2 minutes passed before we both started laughing hysterically about me walking through the house naked with a gun. Story 15. I was in the mental hospital and my roommates and I were pretty close, so I was fine sleeping in my underwear. Sleeping there sucks, so I do anything to get a little more comfortable. Anyways, you get 15-minute checks there, even through the night. I guess I wasn't ready when they shined the flashlight in and I covered up quickly. I got in trouble and was put on boundary precautions. There was a red dot by my name on the whiteboard, so everyone knew. From then on, I had to sit one couch square away from everyone, carefully monitored for the rest of my stay so I didn't get too close to my mental peers. Story 16. Not me, but an old friend's father. They own a cabin in Northern California out in the wilderness and go up a time or two every year. One night, her dad decides to sleep outside on the porch in a sleeping bag, of course in the naked. While he's sleeping, a bear sneaks up to the porch and grabs one of their coolers. This wakes him up and he sees a small bear trundling away with their stuff. This 6'3" large, naked man gets out of his sleeping bag and begins chasing the bear while screaming at the top of his lungs. This scares the poor little bear, so he drops the cooler and hightails it. They still have the cooler to this day, complete with teeth marks.